So the Gothic novel emerges in the late 18th, early 19th century, and it's inspired by the architectural style of the same name. Usually, the setting consists of a castle or manor in an isolated location away from any city or civilization. This genre is dark, eerie, and mysterious, and often contains elements of terror, horror, and the macabre and the bizarre. Some common themes and motifs of the Gothic include power, confinement, and isolation. And before I talk more about power and all that kind of stuff, you want to look at the typical protagonist of the person in the Gothic genre. They are isolated, alone, either physically or emotionally. And what I mean by that is that they are physically either trapped or cut off from society, or they are emotionally alone and without people they know. So typically, these kind of protagonist or heroines, if it's indeed a heroine, they are innocent, they are helpless, and typically an orphan who is victimized or being kind of the antagonized by a brooding villain such as a tyrannical father. So and they are ultimately saved by a dashing hero. But at the heart of Gothic, and if you look at all of these kind of elements combined, you'll notice that at the heart of Gothic fiction is this question of power. On the one hand, it tends to be drawn to very powerful, often supernaturally powerful or obscenely powerful figures, and on the other hand, to people who are completely vulnerable. So you have that dichotomy between power and vulnerability. Um, the Gothic, it wants to explore the limits of what it is to be human, to be driven by either internal desires or forces outside yourself that make you or compel you to do things you don't want to do. And that, of course, gives it an enormous scope to explore the positions of women in the 19th century society or 18th century society, in the way that women are often forced into situations in which they are confronted by irrational kinds of desire or need irrational kinds of desire or need to which they are vulnerable, and which may make their life at risk. So keep that in mind in the back as we read through Northanger Abbey, because while it is not traditionally a Gothic novel, there are so many elements of the Gothic in a real world kind of setting that really kind of flip these conventions on its head. But really, I think that, and we'll talk more about this, um, is that Jane Austen is saying, yes, these novels are scary for whatever reason, but real life is just as scary, if not more so, than a Gothic novel. But Gothic novels are also full of perverse, weird, and dangerous kinds of sexuality, which is one of the reasons why they were thought of as being so dangerous. Gothic is fascinated by incest, by same-sex desire, by violence, by abduction, by rape. So Gothic is a kind of writing that can make explicit, which is what is often held back within more normal kinds of writing. On the one hand, it's fascinated by total sexual power, by these obscene patriarchal figures who seem to be able to have no restraints whatsoever on their desire, but it's also constantly drawn to the figure of the vulnerable young woman and her possible triumph over these apparent unbeatable forces. In the mid 18th century, writers become more and more fascinated by experiences that don't seem to fit within their normal category of what's beautiful and what's pleasurable, and they get fascinated by what it means to be in the middle, this kind of idea of the sublime, which basically is um, it's not harmonious or balanced and beautiful, which essentially means we are fascinated by the things that are terrifying. And Gothic, this kind of being in this kind of terrifying and awesome and overwhelming type of feeling. And Gothic is absolutely at the center of the move to the sublime and sublimity and understanding the world. Ask me more about that if you are interested in that, because I find it in. Anyways, never mind. Gothic particularly tends to appear. It kind of comes from these political and social crises, and you'll see that. And well, you won't see, but a number of Gothic novels were written in the 1790s, where we are on the cusp of the French Revolution, and the Gothic seems to be a way of trying to master and understand these enormous changes. Um, Gothic is also fascinated by the supernatural. In one of the excerpts that I'm asking you guys to read from today, not for today, but for this week, is from Matthew Lewis's novel The Monk, which was the most controversial Gothic novel of its time. And this is a novel that Catherine and Isabella and all of the other characters are talking about, and we'll talk more about it when we get to it in Northanger Abbey. But in the novel The Monk, Satan himself appears at the end of the book, and the main character sells his soul to the devil, a la Faustus, in kind of a way. But there's also a very there's kind of a difference in masculine and feminine Gothic, where you have these male writers, like the writers of The Monk, who kind of take advantage of this supernatural. But we also have the female Gothic, who is most embodied by Anne Radcliffe. And these kind of supernatural elements are explained away by in a naturalistic kind of way. So there are, in other words, there's a natural or realistic explanation to these things that seem supernatural. But to kind of cap that off of the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because not only does Jane Austen kind of use these Gothic genre conventions and characteristics, but she also mentions them in her novel. And you need to, Jane Austen is assuming that the reader of her novel will be a reader of novels and a reader of all of the kind of literature of the time, which is why we need to talk a little bit about Anne Radcliffe and the Mysteries of Udolpho and The Monk. And those are our readings for this week. But Anne Radcliffe is the most popular female author of Gothic genre, of Gothic novels during Jane Austen's time. And The Mysteries of Udolpho is the book that Catherine cannot, I mean, that's the book that she's reading and is so obsessed with in Northanger Abbey, and it influences her in a way that it influences the way that she views the world around her. It was published in 1794, and it was the most popular novels of the late 18th and early 19th century, and it is regarded as a key text in the development of the Gothic genre. So this week you'll be reading excerpts and a summary of the Mysteries of Udolpho. So Austen's parody really mocks both young and women who perceive themselves as characters in the Gothic genre, but it serves as an opportunity to comment on society in a lot of different ways, and she does that through the use of the Gothic novel. There are some themes, and I just put this picture here because I think J.J. Field is such a cute as a button Henry Tilney, and I love him. But anyways, themes of the Northanger Abbey, we have these gender issues, these power issues that are ostensibly connected to the Gothic genre, language and communication, appearance and reality, friendship, social classes, innocence and experiences, and this kind of education, be it a traditional education or one that is based on real life experiences, reading and the dangers of reading or the importance of reading both books and people, social observations and social manners, and all of these kind of combine together to create something really smart and interesting and beautiful, and kind of sums up everything that we've talked about this semester. So your readings for the week include a summary of and excerpts from The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe and excerpts from The Monk by Matthew Lewis. Those are in Canvas and PDF files, which I have provided for you, and you may want to get a jump start on volume 1 of Northanger Abbey. So please let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I'm sorry if I rambled too much in the kind of giving you a context for stuff this week. So let me know if you have any questions, and I can't wait to talk about these things with you guys in our Zoom discussion this week and see what you guys have to say in discussion boards.